We're up to our entire interview with the great Andy Curran. Bass and vocalist for the band Coney Hatch went off on his own when Coney Hatch first broke up 30 years ago and released Whiskey and the Devil, an album that did incredibly well for him. And he's commemorating it now with a box set. There's a test pressing giveaway. There'll be links for how you can put your name down for that, all in the top of the description. In this one, we talk about Rush an awful lot because he worked for Anthem Records, Rush's record label, got to know the three guys really well, is still in contact with Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson, especially Alex. We talk about Alex's discipline as a guitarist in this clip. We talk about Whiskey and the Devil, partying days with the band, and how he's really not interested in doing that anymore. Guitars and everything in between. Coming up with the great Andy Curran. Hey, man.
Hey, there's a familiar face. How are you, John?
I'm doing well. I'm thinking of writing a book called Everyone Loves Andy Curran. Whenever your name comes up, like, I don't know, man. I always say this: reputation is someone else's business, right? And
Yeah,
I got to tell you, man, I remember I put it in my notes. Make sure you tell Andy Curran, everyone loves him. So there,
that's very
that's how I
that's
start an interview.
very kind of you to say that. Isn't there a show called Everybody Loves Raymond? So we'll call it Everybody Loves Andy instead, right? Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Well, I'll get a little bit philosophical for you to start the interview off and tell you that my parents raised me with a very important fundamental path, which is treat other people how you want to be treated, and I've tried to do that for most of my career.
So when you revisit a recording and you repackage and it comes out and it's a box set, that's how is that a cathartic experience for you to do that?
Absolutely. It was, listen, I'm going to condense this because I could keep you on for a very long time, but I'm going to blame the pandemic and I'm going to blame the COVID outbreak for starting to purge at home. And my wife, and she's been so supportive, but she'll say to me stuff, John, like, do you really need 15 bankers boxes filled with old tapes and articles and photos and everything? And I'm a bit of a pack rat, guilty as charged, right? So I start going through these boxes and I'm finding old demos and I'm finding photos, and a lot of it, like, that was if I was to speak maybe, and at the risk of sounding almost a little bit arrogant here, that was a really good period for me after I left Coney Hatch, and had some, three top 10 hits off that solo record, two Juno Award nominations, took home a Juno, ended up, finished 18 months on the road and playing on the with Rush, opening on the Roll the Bones tour. So quite an incredible ride, right? And I look back at that record and it's 30 plus years old. And I'm really proud of it. And a bunch of my buddies were like, well, how come you're not re-releasing it, man? You should re-release it, celebrate the anniversary of that record, right? And so I ended up talking to Tom Barry at Alert Records, and I said, Tom, COVID, we kind of missed the 30th anniversary. What do you think? Why don't we re-release it? I've got some demos and I've got outtakes and I've got this and I've got that. And all of it was a product of COVID and going through these bangers boxes, right? So Tom said, look, I don't really have an active label with Alert anymore, but if you want to do it, go ahead and do it. I'll let you do it. And so he had donated all of my master tapes to the University of Toronto. He gave me full access to them. And John, when I got a hold of them, I forgot most of the stuff. I forgot that we had recorded two extra songs. I was like, oh my God, yeah, those two songs, we never put them on the record. And then I found some live performances and everything. So it jogged my memory, but full transparency, buddy, it made me feel very proud to go, oh wow, what a rocket ride I was on for that particular chapter of my life, and then looking back at it, and um, I'll name drop and tell you that Steve Harris from Iron Maiden, a very close friend of mine, we became friends when Coney Hatch toured with them. And he would say to me stuff, he'd call me, go, yeah, mate, I'm listening to your Whiskey and the Devil record. It's brilliant. And I said, well, Steve, it's funny you said that. I just remixed it. And he said, I hope you haven't screwed it up, mate. It didn't need remixing, right? But in my mind, it did. It was 30 years later. So I wanted to freshen it up. I wanted to the indicative of that time was lots of reverb on the vocals, lots of reverb on the drums. So I tamed them down, and he called me up and said, "I hope you haven't screwed up your record."
Has he heard it? Has he?
He's heard it, and he said, "I think you did a good job, but I still prefer the old one. I still prefer the old one." And I have to tell you that I remember getting the ZZ Top Tres Hombres record when they had remastered it and remixed it. And I was really disappointed because it didn't sound like that old ZZ Top record, right? And I had grown to love the sound of that record. And when you get emotionally attached to records and somebody changes them, people get angry, right? So I don't know. So far, so good. Nobody's complained except Steve Harris, and that's a pretty loud voice.
Well, speaking of having
Yeah,
stuff, now your
yeah.
process, did your purging involve more than obviously this album?
It did. The purging actually helped accomplish a couple things. I found out that I had double duplicates and triplicates and all kinds of stuff, and I was like, I don't need three copies of this and stuff. So I actually donated some stuff to the University of Toronto Media Commons, and it's a really cool program they have there. Essentially, when a student comes in and is interested in a music project, if they want to know and research how it started from fruition to the end, they can literally go look at demos and handwritten lyrics and contracts and different mixes, and then see the itinerary of the tour. And they watch the lifespan of a record go of an artist's record or recording play out. So I thought that was really cool. So I kept some stuff that was near and dear to my heart. That was like I don't certain photos or backstage passes or anything. Spinning off into a different tangent, I can tell you it spawned the side project that I have with Alex Lifeson called Envy of None, where like everybody, we were locked up, and I was still functioning, doing work, but I kept going. Wait, I'm in my office here, which is kind of like yours. I got a recording studio, and I started working on music, um, and it spawned Envy of None with Alex Lifeson and I exchanging ideas. Never ever did I think that anybody in Rush or, Ian Thornley and Big Wreck or Tea Party or any of those bands that I worked with when I was at the management company, I never entertained a conversation with them, John, about collaborating. I was the company guy. I had my A&R hat on. I had my management label hat on. And when Alex Lifeson called me and said, "Would you do me a favor and play some bass guitar on a couple of my songs that I'm working on?" 16-year-old kid that saw them at Massey Hall is going like, "In what world does this happen? In what world does Alex Lifeson call you and say, do you want to play some bass?" I'm like, "Of course I do." But I actually said to him, John, I said, "Don't you know any other bass players? I think you got a guy on speed dial whose initials are GL." And he's like, "Yeah, but Getty's writing his book and he's doing this and he's doing that, right?" So I said, "I would be honored to. I'd be honored to play some bass." And he goes, "And I'll return the favor," is the quote that he said. So I had met this young female vocalist from Portland, Oregon named Maya Wynn, and we had started collaborating. So I said to him, "Would you mind if I sent you something that I'm working on with Maya?" Sent him the tracks, fell in love with her voice, and boom, Envy of None was born. So that whole period of the pandemic and COVID spawned a ton of creativity, a ton of purging, um, really made me focus on my family and how important it was and take advantage of that time. Really adjusted my life to realize how much time I spent working and maybe not on the life balance. I think that happened with a lot of people. So it was a bit of a reset for me. I almost think that COVID was a massive reset for everybody, and I'm thankful that I came out on the other side, because I know a lot of people had a very difficult time. But I always say that I got horseshoes up my ass, and I've got some guardian angels upstairs that are looking after me, because beautiful opportunities drop in my lap, and like the 30th anniversary of Whiskey and the Devil record and Envy of None and all these things. I'm like, in what lifetime does that happen, John? And I'm a lucky guy, man. I consider myself a very lucky dude.
how do you get the train going? Do you ever have problems? Are you one of those guys that if you stay away from it, it's harder to get back to it? Because that's me. But
Mhm.
how do you self motivate? How do you how do you keep this train going? How do you do it?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you say that too, because and not to name drop, I talked to Alex Lifeson quite a lot. We always had a great friendship, and he tells me he plays his guitar every single day. And he's like, he's like a 16-year-old kid. Look at my calluses on my hands, Andy, right? I don't have that discipline. I think I go through bursts and ups and downs of creativity where I'll feel inspired one day and I'll go, you know what? I know I started a couple ideas in the studio. I'm going to go and see if I can finish them. Or I'll be driving around in the car, John, and melody will come in my head and I'll pull over and I'll grab my iPhone and I'll sing into it. And then I'll go home and I'll lay it down on guitar and bass, right? But having a personal home recording studio has definitely been another blessing for me because I don't. Again, I feel lucky enough that I can, if I get an idea, I can just go into the room, close the door, put the headphones on, put it down, and I don't have to go to a recording studio or get a whole band together and everything, right? But you had mentioned saying, was it cathartic? It was. It was really cool to clean up a little bit, keep my wife happy. Look how many boxes are going out, and look how many are.
Joe Lunchbucket and Evelyn Everybody, they're great fans. They'll buy the music, but they don't necessarily, not, like guys like you and me, I'm sure the guys who looked at the liner notes, and there's a lot of guys like that. I just wish
Yeah.
there were more. Like when I think of Ian Thornley, I think of going, and the real guys know, of course, they know.
Yes.
That never surprises me. That never ceases to amaze me that some people just they like the music, but it's not everything in their life. They got mortgages, they got this. They were not 16 anymore.
Yeah. And John, getting back to what you said about Kim and Ian Thornley, I think Kim Mitchell is extremely underrated and one of the country's top musicians and amazing guitarist. You hear people talk about these guitar heroes, and I'll bring up Alan Holdsworth as a guy who Kim I believe has equally as much talent, and so Kim paying accolades to Ian Thornley is an interesting conversation because Kim just doesn't see himself as that level of a musician. From the outside, I do, but I have to tell you, and this will shock you too. I mean this very respectfully to Getty, Alex, and Neil. I've had the pleasure of working with a lot of great musicians when I took a bit of a hiatus and started working with Ray Daniels at Anthem Records as the management company and the label side. And Ian Thornley, by far, hands down, I would say is the most talented musician I've ever met in my life. He has just 10 scoops of ice cream on everything, his guitar playing, his sense of melody, his voice, his discipline. I have never met a musician like that in my life, and people would be like, "Wait a second, you worked with Neil Peart and Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson?" Of course, those guys are there. But Ian, there's something about that guy, John, that if you don't know about Big Rec and Ian Thornley, do yourself a favor and check this guy out. He is just one of our country's biggest gems. Like yourself, a lot of great memories with April Wine growing up and listening to their records. I remember driving to Buffalo to see the Rolling Stones play, and the opening acts were as follows: April Wine. I remember them playing Roller when that just came out, and Atlanta Rhythm Section and Journey and the Rolling Stones were on the bill at the Buffalo football stadium there. And seeing April Wine as a Canadian kid live, that was the only time I ever got to see him. And they were on quite a roller coaster ride in the U.S. with that song
Yep.
Roller, and it's etched in my brain, John, as one of my favorite concerts that I ever went to. And Journey played Wheels in the Sky, and
Oh,
Atlanta Rhythm Section played. I'm trying to think what their big "I'm So Into You" and
yeah.
all of those ones, right? And it was just a great time in my life because I'm a music fan first, like yourself. That's what got me into wanting to be a musician. We could have a whole other discussion about my record collection and why I love music so much. And if this career ends tomorrow, I'll just continue to buy vinyl and listen to music and discover new bands because that's what I love.
One more thing about purging. How much stuff do you have? Does it fit in a normal size room? How much stuff do you have? Like stuff, rock and roll stuff.
Oh my. Well, the biggest problem is the guitar bass collection over the years. So, again, the conversation goes like this from my wife, Andy, do you really need 22 guitars and basses? And my answer is, how long is a piece of string? Yes, I do. And I go on to tell her because I mean this, like, no, I don't need that many. But I'll get a little trippy on you here and say that my instruments that I own are my paintbrush. They're my utilities, and so if I need a certain texture or sound or color, all of my guitars sound different. All of my basses sound different, and that's the beauty of writing something and going, you know what? I'm not going to use my Fender Precision on this song. I'm going to use my Hofner Beetle bass because it's got a clunky thuddy sound, right? So we had to get, John, funny story for you. When we moved into our new home, I had to get a full closet storage spot built for my guitars because there was nowhere to put them. So I'm sure eventually I'll thin the herd, as the guitar collectors like to say. I don't need 22, but I love it. I love that part of being. It's like a painter. You want a blue and you want a red and you want different colors and vibes, and that's what my instrument collection helps me achieve. Are
Uh,
these different tones?
I saw you put this up. Hold on. Uh, there's a joke about oh yeah, this here. Did it do on your Facebook, the
Yes,
contest.
yes,
Tell me about that.
yes. So we wanted to do a couple different things to just draw some attention to it. And we talk about collecting vinyl, and it became apparent to me because I am known to troll eBay and Facebook Marketplace and Kijiji and stuff like that. And I started seeing test pressings and people going, I've got a test pressing from the April Wine Glance album or something, right? And then you look at it and it's like 500-600 bucks or something, or if it's signed, it's even more. So when I was working with the people at Sing Market who are releasing this record with me, they said, "What do you think about the test pressings? Are you okay to sign them, and maybe we'll give them away as a contest?" And as a guy who's trying to purge, not collect more stuff, I said, "Yeah, that's a great idea. Then I won't keep the test pressings, right?" So that's what we're doing with Record Store Day. And Record Store Day Canada has been very vocal and supportive that this is one of their favorite records. The guy that runs it is a friend acquaintance of mine. He said, Andy, that No Tattoos record with License to Love and Let Go, I listened to that thing and I wore my copies out. And can we do something together? So we did that contest, and then I also got in touch with Fender, and I work quite a lot with them with Geddy Lee. And I said, look, I know I'm not Geddy Lee, but I've had a pretty good long career in Canada. What about if we do a giveaway, a Fender bass, and I'll sign the pick guard? And they were like, absolutely, because I started to really use Fender basses at the end of my, after the hiatus. I started really bringing out those are my workhorses, the Fender Precision basses. So we've got two contests going, and one of them is a Willy Wonka golden ticket. If you bought this record, you might actually get your name pulled to win a Fender Precision bass. But the test pressings are fun. I think they're very, very, and the cool thing about them, if anybody listening to your show doesn't know this, John, I have to approve test pressings. That's the mother. And if it sounds great, then all of the children will sound great. So when you win that test pressing, it's one of one. It's the very first one to come off the pressing plant. So I guess if you're into it, it's collectible. The test pressings are pretty cool. Segues a little bit into the song "Whiskey and the Devil" because we we had a performance rider in Coney Hatch where and we're all 19 years old and idiots, like we were on stun, like where's the next party? And I don't ever recall thinking like how many records are we selling or how much money are we making. It was all about the party and
But
where are we
it's a when
going.
in Rome thing though, when you're young like that too,
Yes,
when you're a rocker.
totally right. So anyway, Steve Shelsky in Coney Hatch was 4 years older than me, and he said we got to have whiskey on the rider. And I said I hate whiskey, and it just burns going down. Right? He goes, "Oh, you'll get used to it, right?" So the song Whiskey and the Devil is about drinking whiskey and doing stupid, stupid things afterwards and the repercussions of drinking far too much on the road. And when I smell whiskey to this day, John, I'm like, oh, it just sends, like shivers up my back. So I'm not a big whiskey drinker, but I do like bourbon.
Okay, I've gotten a lot of stares when I ask this, especially for the guys, because I'm 63. Most rockers have 10 years on me that I talk to, the older
Yep.
guys, the classic rocker guys.
Hmm.
But I've when I know them enough, I'll say, "Why are you still alive? How come
Yeah. Well, a couple different things. Growing up in a family of six kids and I think I really was lucky, a pretty well-grounded guy. Never had what I would say an addictive personality. Certain had, like you said, when in Rome, there's most of the activities, the outside activities. Uh, Tried them, but was like, yeah, not really for me. Even like smoking pot, it raunched my voice out. And there was a part of me that went, wait, you got to sing every night. It's why are you smoking? So I had a certain part of my DNA that was like, take care of yourself. You're out there playing shows. I don't think I had an addictive personality. I watched a lot of people abuse drugs and alcohol around me and watched them either pass away or lose their job. So I watched and went, yeah, I got to be very careful with that. But I do feel that, again, growing up and playing a lot of hockey and tennis, especially, I brought my tennis rackets on the road with me, and that's what forged the friendship with Steve Harris when he found out when we were touring with Iron Maiden, we had our rackets on the road. So I would try to stay active in between, because there's a lot of boredom on the road and there's a lot of downtime. A lot of people don't see that. The traveling, the hotels, the sound check, everything that people don't see is where I feel that if you fall into this addictive, you're bored. So what am I going to do? I'm going to do some more drugs tonight because I'm bored, and I'm going to drink more at it because I'm bored, right? So whenever I could, I brought my sticks and skates on the road, and if we could find an ice pad somewhere. So I still play hockey 3 times a week, John, and I still try to remain active if I can. And
you
it's
play
one of my
hockey 3 times
passions.
a week?
I do, I do, I do, sir.
Wow. Good. I still have my goalie equipment back behind this shelf.
Oh,
My
nice, nice. We got it.
Jacques Plante mask, my Fiber Sport
Oh,
mask, my
I love it.
GM10 blocker and catcher. I've still got my Cooper goalie pads. It's crazy, but I
Amazing.
I haven't been on skates in I don't know how long. It's crazy. By the way, you had told me last time we chatted
Mhm.
um, that Getty and Alex would play again, and they have since then. Is that do you think that they will still record anything in the future?
I know that listen, I'm going to answer that two ways. I'm going to say to you, I hope they do. As a Rush fan, I hope those boys do, because I see that there's a lot of race left in both of those horses. Those guys are extremely creative guys. I would be shocked if they didn't do something together. That's maybe the hopeful side of me, but I do know that Getty is spending a lot of time and has just announced the release of his book, his memoirs. He's got a TV show that he's working on. Alex is an avid golfer, and I think that the boys are enjoying the time away from that very sort of right tour, right record tour, rinse and repeat. And I think they're enjoying being their own guys with a bit of freedom right now. So I don't think it's imminent, but the interesting thing is the 50th anniversary of Rush is next year. So I think if there is ever going to be a time, John, we might see something happen next year. Yeah, no, John, we covered a lot of stuff, buddy, and I always enjoy talking to you, man. It feels like I'm talking to an old friend when I get on the line with you. So thank you for the time again, and you're always been so supportive. So I appreciate it, my friend.
Hope you enjoyed that. Andy Curran's one of my favorite guys to interview. He's such a gentleman. As he put it during the interview, it feels like two friends talking when we sit down and talk about music. And we also have inside stories about people that we mutually know. Some of that stuff we include in the interview, some of that stuff we cannot include. His debut album, Whiskey and the Devil, is celebrating 30 years. There's links in the description where you can get the box set, as well as a test pressing contest where you can put your name down for that. All in the very top of the description. There's a podcast version of this, as well as the video. If you're watching one, you can check out the other one. All the links in the description. And remember, there's Rock History Canada hats, Rock History book, and Rock History music hats. Brand new baseball caps that just came out. Links at the top of the description as well. I'm John Beaudin. This is Rock History Canada.